me to the definition of servile. Servile means to show an excessive willingness to serve or please others. The two videos are connected in the sense that they are the exact same, minus a small detail in Alivres. Take a look at servile.
Team 2, get ready.
You suck!
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to round out our test of every single boss in Castle Nathria, because we have it. We've done them all 10 have been revealed to us, and in a twist, the last couple we tested kind of rescued this entire raid for me, Finn. How about you?
The last two are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're not the last two. We have tested the last boss, which is Side Nathrius. Usually we don't actually get to test that till halfway through Mythic testing, but Artificer Zymox is the other boss we tested, who was also very, very cool. So let me introduce you to Artificer Zymox.
Wonderful! I have been hoping to test these relics on live targets. Die together!
Finn, tell me about Artificer Zymox.
Apart from it being hard to pronounce, it's a very interesting single target fight. To be honest, there's not many of them in this game, which is sort of makes it kind of interesting. Basically, all this is about is you get two people are linked essentially, not really, but the two people get debuffs on them that will drop a pool that is essentially a teleporter pad, and those two pools are linked. And then there's a series of mechanics throughout the rest of the fight that require you to use the teleporter pad efficiently. So a lot of it is about placement. A lot of it's about managing the room. There's a draw-in in the middle of the room that will try and pull you to the center and kill you. So you have to place like a teleporter pad in the middle and one at the edge of the room. So when you get drawn in, you teleport back out. It's really cool use of space and mechanics, actually. I really enjoyed this fight. And then there's another stuff. I know you were playing Hunter, I think, when we tested this as well. And there's tons of stuff to do, like picking up little seeds that are going to explode on the ground, taking the portal so that you drop the seeds far away from the raid. And yeah, there's just like a ton of stuff for a single target fight. I was hugely impressed with this one.
It's nothing to do with the boss. That's what's cool. Like, the boss himself is kind of irrelevant. Like, you know, he drops some bombs and things like that, but nothing that you're like, if the boss was the boss, you'd be like, this is like a trash mob. But it is all about managing this central area that comes down with various different mechanics that involve utilizing these dimensional tears effectively. So as Finn has just laid out there, it's about a case of, okay, what is the mechanic we have right now? How do we want to be able to teleport with these mechanics in order to make it work? And it's seamless as well. That's what made it really nice to me. It's absolutely seamless passing through the portal and reappearing, is that it feels very much like Portal.
It was too seamless for me sometimes when I didn't realize I'd done it. Until the boss was like out of range. I was like, I stepped in. Oops. Yeah, because you get chased around by ads. That's my favorite part of it. Is that you drop to the two portals and then you get chased around by ads, but the ads will catch you if you just try and run. So you have to bait them towards a portal, step into it, appear at the other side of the room, and make them run across again. So that stuff's like super fun. It is so seamless that I did step in and then I meant to stay for a little bit longer and stepped back in again.
It's only a 3-second debuff.
3-second debuff before you can take it again. Yeah, but
that's it. 3 seconds.
Fun.
It is. Fun. It was really nice to see that they came up with just simple ideas. So it's a fixate like we've all seen before from the. So it's 3 phases. The first phase is going to be the fixate, where these ads, and they're really fast, by the way. Like, I was playing a hunter, and even disengaging and like using cheetah could not get you away from these ads. They're really, really fast. But ideally, what you do is you set up dimensional gateways on either side of the room. So you have one near the boss, you get chased, you go through that one, and then you appear on the other side of the room, as the ad can't go through the portal, so he has to chase you across the room and then step back into the portal, and you reappear next to the boss. and deal with it that way. The other thing that Finn mentioned there is these roots of extinction. So a rather large plant comes down in the middle of the room. This is phase 2, around 66% health. I think they're doing it in chunks of HP, where they drop these huge bombs, but they can be picked up. So the idea is that you have like 4 people, there's 4 bombs, you go and pick them up, you place them away from the raid, and then you all use the dimensional gateway, which has been placed by other players, to get back out of range of the explosion that's about to go off. And it's really fun to get that stuff done. The last mechanic, as Finn said earlier, is the draw in. And we came up with some really interesting ideas for this. There's a couple of ways of handling it. It sucks you to the middle, and it's quite a strong suck.
Suction!
I think only like Windrush Totem made you able to run out of it. I think Demon Hunters could get out of it, but for the most part, most people would be drawn into the middle, and it kills you if you're in the middle when it actually detonates.
Yeah,
but
it
what
gets
you could
stronger
do,
as well. So it starts off, you're able to run against it at the start, but then it gets stronger. So even if you use all your movement stuff at the end, if you're not right at the edge of the room, you're probably going to get hit by it.
Mm-hmm. But we set up, we tried a couple of things, because there's a couple of ways of dealing with it. One is, you kind of just let yourself be drawn in, and you can see when it's going to detonate, and then you can use the portal or even a wall at gateway just to get out of it. But what we did that was actually hilarious was put 2 portals relatively close to each other and just have the raid stand between them. So you could keep DPSing that way as it sucked you into the middle, but if you lined yourself up, it sucked you through the portal, which then popped you out back at the original portal. And by the time you'd been sucked back in, 3 seconds had passed, so it just kept cycling us around like we were on some sort of infinite treadmill, and just allowed us to continue playing. I loved that the best. It seemed the most inefficient though, compared to just slowly like running against it a little bit and then just getting out at the exact right time, because there was then no risk of you accidentally being caught. But to watch it happening with all the players just cycling round and round and round was really, really fun.
Yeah, it's really good. I like the I liked Laws's one that he identified kind of by accident, where he clicked a Warlock Gateway as it was exploding and immune to damage.
Yeah,
I think that could be a way to do it as well, sort of KJ Warlock knockback style, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's such a fun mechanic. The portals are so good. Yeah,
I'm amazed how they programmed
please.
them. It was yeah, exactly. It was so weird how they programmed them to work so well, because the fight itself is very simple. Move bombs, don't get caught in the middle. Like, it's all very basic stuff, but you put this twist on it, and it makes it all that more interesting. So it was a really cool boss to get into, and really sparked some hope for this raid. But none sparked.
Light be with you.
Hope more than the last boss himself, Mr. Sire Denathrius.
Confess your sins, lest they consume you. Your rebellion is at an end.
Sire Denathrius Finn, final boss of the raid, and shaping up to be almost Black Hand-esque in its design. This thing was very, very cool.
It was awesome. I unfortunately missed part of this because raid testing was a little bit scuffed this week and I had to leave. But yeah, I got to play phase 1 and a little bit of intermission in phase 2, but it is super fun. There's so much happening, which is interesting in and of itself. There's loads of
hell of a
debuffs
puzzle to
manage.
solve, right?
Yeah, it definitely seems like there is going to be an optimal way to do this, especially with the way the stacks work. So essentially everyone has something called Burden of Sin at the start of the encounter. You have 6 stacks, but he will throw you up in the air at a point, and your stacks determine how high you go, and then you all cleave damage. So if you're all at the same height, if you all have the same amount of stacks, you'll die, which happened to us a couple of times.
Well, it's interesting enough, even Alex, as meticulous and prepared as he is for these raid encounters, and actually goes over the bosses before we test them from what he's discovered from the Dungeon Journal, actually forgot this is kind of how it works. Because when you see stacks of a debuff on a player, your immediate thought is, oh, the more stacks I have, the more ticking damage I'm taking. But that's not really how this works. It's all about offsetting how many people have the same amount of debuffs. Because the actual ticking damage isn't that big of a deal. You obviously don't want it to go too high, but it's not that big of a deal. So, if you say, okay, we start with 6, and you can remove them in the fight by standing in the boss's cleave, it removes some of the stacks. It was a bit random how many it removed. But if you try and go like, okay, let's keep everybody down to low stacks, so it's low ticking damage, that's a bad idea, because you might end up with everybody on, say, 2 stacks. You're all going to die. What you need is some people on 2, some people on 3, some people on 4, and some people on 5. so that when you get detonated, it's a different amount of detonation and cleave that's going off. It's not really about the ticking damage, it's about how many people are sharing this debuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting way to do debuffs for sure. There is the only one thing I'm slightly worried about this. There is just going to be a best way to do this. There's not really like on the fly decision making here. You'll just have a set of 5 people take the first cleave, a set of 5 people take the second cleave, and so on. So it's going to be relatively mapped out by the time you actually get to progress this boss. But it's a cool way of doing debuffs for sure, rather than just dispelling them or leaving them on Il'gynoth style. And I'm definitely happy with that sort of change. This sort of fight though tends to get worked out pretty simply, and you'll just have a spreadsheet that tells you when to stand in the cleave.
The simple spreadsheet, which is obviously well beyond of what a lot of people like to do for raiding.
Yeah,
Not a very simple spreadsheet, but it's going to be, I think, a basic thing that will probably happen here is a boss mod that tells you like 10 people have 4. And so you need to say, right, some of you with 4 need to change your amount of debuffs because that's going to kill us all. You need, or at least kill you, because obviously the people with 3 debuffs aren't even going to take any of that damage at all. So it really is a case of matching the amount of debuffs amongst the players to get that working. The interesting twist on this, so 2 things that are happening that you'll see here is one is phase 1 is a DPS check because he periodically will fill 1/3 of his room with like this blood stuff on the floor, and you can't fight in there and you have to move around. Now it seemed to us it was based on where the boss was or where the largest clump of players were, what he decided to pick for the thirds. But it obviously means that as he does it in thirds, by the third one the room is full, so you do have a DPS check similar to Blackhand of actually getting through this phase, and then you'll go to a different floor entirely. But I have to point this out, this is also the day that the raid testing and servers got reset, so you can see, at least from my POV, I don't even have a Covenant ability. It didn't work for me. It worked for some players, it didn't work for others. We have no legendaries, we had no soul binds, so even though this is heroic testing, we were likely very undergeared for what was supposed to be happening, or at least underpowered in terms of what we could put out. So phase 1 was a bit of a DPS check for us. Also, raid size is a thing you have to take into account there, because scaling is always a bit wonky with flexible raid sizes. So it felt like a DPS check to us. I kind of suspect it won't be when it actually comes out, at least on heroic. It won't be too severe. You'll obviously want to meet that DPS check, but not heavy. So phase 1 heavily involves around managing these stacks, having a certain amount of players stand in front of the boss to share this cleave. Don't get too heavy hit. The one thing that we didn't point out, which was super fun for you, Finn, as you were playing the new Shadow Priest on this raid, is that everybody who gets hit by that cleave to reduce their stacks spawns an ad. And later on down the line, when you're having more and more players get hit to remove their stacks, it spawns a lot of ads, meaning big AoE is a big deal in a world of capped AoEers.
Yes, uncapped AoE here seems kind of broken, if I'm honest, because it was rare that we would only spawn 5 or 6. We were spawning 10 to 12 at a time. And to have uncapped AoE was super fun. And Shadow Priest,
I wish I had it.
Please don't change it, Blizzard. Please don't change it.
There you go. They're coming for you, dude. They're coming for you.
It's so good. But anyway, yeah, I think the Echo of Sins, they're called, the little ads. They pulse damage. Each one pulses damage for like 1,500, 1,600, I think it was, every couple of seconds.
In a small radius. It wasn't too bad of ranged.
It's a small radius, but it's hefty damage for the healers to deal with if you don't kill them quickly. So AoE is definitely a thing, which is good because single target is also a thing on this fight. So specs that can do both are going to be really, really useful.
Yeah,
or certainly like raid comp allowing for both will be useful as well.
Certainly when we get into phase 2, which adds some more stuff. Another callback that we haven't even talked about in phase 1 as well is the return of the Mistress Zine spear line. For those of you who did Tomb of Sargeras and have dealt with this spear mechanic where there'll be an ad aiming at a person and you need to split the damage between everybody stood in the line. And it gets very awkward because you can see we ended up starting tanking it near the wall because that meant the ads spawned a bit closer together, made them a bit easier to AoE because obviously there's less radius for them to spawn in. This made it a little tricky to manage this mechanic. It can be soloed with immunities, which is really nice on some occasions to say, don't worry about my line, put more people in the other line, I'll go turtle it, ice block it, or whatever it's going to be to deal with that. But it is something else that's also going on in this phase 1. There's so much happening here as you've got these spears coming out, the floor is filling with blood. You have to sometimes take cleaves, sometimes not. You have to deal with the ads, and you have to be prepared for that because they do so much damage. You're getting thrown in the air. You want to try and maintain high damage because there's a DPS check going. hell of a way to start the first boss, or the first phase of the very last boss. But then it doesn't get any weaker, right, Finn? And this was an interesting mechanic. So once you hit this 70%, everybody gets tossed to the edges of the room.
Yep.
And you have to walk through the blood to reach the center of the room. However, you are slowed depending on how many stacks of this burden of sin you had going into that 70%. So that's another thing to manage, Finn, is trying to get everybody down to... I think we found that if you had... Like, Ghost Wolf could be used. Not a lot of movement speed could be used. I couldn't use Disengage or anything like that. But if you had 3 stacks, you were risky if you were a naturally slow class anyway. 2 stacks was fine. You could just walk forward and you were good. But past that, you're relying on your friends to grip you and stuff, because you can't even cast any spells while you're in this blood trying to walk to the middle.
Yeah, I couldn't get there on 3 on a priest. I was just too slow. If you go down in Ghost Wolf, then you retain Ghost Wolf form, and you can just wander there. Death Knights are really good here because they can't be slowed below 70. Like, there's definitely some useful classes here. It's just another way to have them manage how many Burden of Sins you have towards the end of Phase 1. It's really cool. It's a good mechanic. I like the aesthetic of this intermission as well. It's not an intermission where you just like do nothing, which I really like. And it's substantially better than like the Ashara one, which I kind of hated.
I think this is just designed so you don't ignore spawning ads. Like if the rate, like you said earlier, the stacks you get, this Burden of Sin stacks, aren't that much of a big deal. So I think this is entirely designed to make sure you don't just ignore that mechanic and just blast the boss and ignore ads and go full single target and cleave them all down. You have to take the cleave, which then in turn spawns the ads. Otherwise, you're not going to get your raid into phase 2. They're going to have too many stacks and be just unable to get to the second phase at all. So it seems like a really clever way of saying, this is a mechanic. Yeah, sure, you could bypass some of this, but it's not going to work for you later on. And we want to make sure that works.
It's going to be really fun when you overgear this fight, because you're going to have to take the stacks, the cleaves phase 1 anyway. So it'll probably just be a case of everyone standing in the cleave, which is going to be even more fun. I'm really looking forward to that.
AoE to death. That should be really fun. But then we get to phase 2. Phase 2 is when we actually go down into the kind of chamber proper, where we're now going to be using, similar to Artificer, we're going to be using blood mirrors to move around, where we're now fighting Sidon Athreus. He's then going to warp in his weapon that's going to help him out in this phase, and he's also going to start spawning ads around the room that are in really weird positions. So he spawns this weapon called Ramonia that you also have to fight, and that shares health with the boss, and then starts putting out the kind of atypical 3 players are marked, and it's going to shoot between all 3 of them. So those 3 need to stand in a way that it won't hit other players. Otherwise, of course, you get a bleed. What a shock. And it also knocks you down. But then you're going to have these ads that spawn on different platforms, like without a pathway to get to them. Now, it seems to me that the way the boss worked, and the tanks were kind of messing with this, is that if the boss couldn't immediately get to you, it used Venthyr Teleport to get to you. So it definitely seems, because gateways worked, normal Venthyr Teleport worked, you could disengage over to them, obviously Heroic Leap, Demon Hunters could get to these ads. The idea is that you can get everybody over to these platforms, and then the boss will just teleport to the platform to deal with it. But we didn't get much messing around with that, because we were trying to blast the boss. It was Alex.
Light be with you. Go with honor, friend.
I need to get closer.
Well met. Be careful. Well met.
target. I need to get closer.
What's up?
I woke up on that Sunday morning. Told her mama get her, dude. I was writing while them people snoring. And I ain't talking about no interview. Boy, I'm so left field. I got joy in my heart still. For this rap shit, I've been backwards, no backwoods, but I'm hot still. On my last tour, I got new fans, I got new shirts, I got signs still. Money McFly the future, but my rap got that. I was ridiculed when I first started. White boy with them pun beats.
Who the hell buys a Stinger like it's a good gun?
Dude, it actually
Stinger
is
is
okay. Yeah,
It's actually
No, it's not.
Dude, Mike, you use a dynamic crosshair. You're done.
What the?
You're done.
You're done.
I don't.
You're
That was
done.
like 10 rounds ago, dude.
Yeah, but you did it anyway.